Geeks and geekettes, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it is time once again for Ask Chuck Dixon, another exciting episode where you ask me questions about what I do for a living, and what I do for a living is I write comic books. And if I may impose upon you, once again, hit that subscribe button if you already haven't. I've really noticed an exponential increase in the number of views since you folks have hit that button. So it really helps spread the word and grow this little community here and bring in more interesting people with more interesting questions, because it's you who makes this happen. I mean, I don't just sit here and bloviate about myself. I need you to ask me questions so I can bloviate about myself. So let's get more people in to look at it. I mean, I know there's a lot of comic fans who would enjoy the inside look at comics that I offer here. And let's go there. Okay, Mark Charters submits an essay. You said in number 154 that any Superman interpretation where he has to kill to save the day, that's a stupid Superman. And I don't ever want to see a stupid Superman, and you don't either, any more than any of us want to see a weepy Batman. Leaving aside the question of whether or not to stick to the original source material, which I approve of, by the way, I don't see anything immoral, unjust, or unprincipled with killing a particularly heinous villain, even ignoring the practical side of it. The old short drop and sudden stop always seems more humane than spending decades in some of the supervillain prisons out there. That's why I had no problem with Superman killing General Zod in Man of Steel, as even though it was a very definite break with tradition, General Zod fully deserved it. Superman choosing to take on the burden of having killed someone, I think, also marks him out as a more moral figure than, say, Batman, who by refusing to go all Punisher on his rogues gallery has allowed countless people in Gotham to suffer and die. I put it to you that a Superman who kills, not murders, but kills, is more moral than a Superman who never does so. I agree with you in principle, but not in practice. Superman is a childhood wish fulfillment character. Childhood wish fulfillment characters should never be lethal. Fred Flintstone should never murder Mr. Slate. I mean, you don't take that step beyond. These characters were created and exist in a world where there's a strict moral code against killing. It's called the Ten Commandments. And Superman is not going to violate that. He is not a soldier. He is not a police officer. He is not endowed with the right to use lethal force. He is, for all intents and purposes, a citizen acting in the name of the rule of law, in the name of humanity. You know, he's acting as a hero, but he's strictly a volunteer, and it's just not right to have him kill. And you can say, well, in the real world, this isn't the real world. This should never be the real world. Superman should exist in a reality that that's free of the nonsense that we have to deal with, the grubby animal-like behavior of some human beings. This is escapist entertainment. We want to go to Superman's world and be reassured that there is still goodness in the heart of humanity. As Clark Kent and Superman strive to become more human, to fit in with the family of man. And in order to do that, he's got to be a paragon. And paragons don't go around murdering their bad guys. Now, I see the argument, Superman and Batman, they let the bad guys, they let Lex Luthor and the Joker go time and time again. Well, yeah, that's a problem when your readership has been reading these things for decades. Yes, it does seem ridiculous that they just don't do away with their arch nemesis. And yes, you're right. It would be more moral to kill the Joker than allow him to kill people in our reality. But in the Batman reality, where once upon a time the comic book audience turned over every few years and a new audience was introduced to these characters, this sort of moral fatigue didn't set in, because it didn't have time to set in, because most kids were only reading the comics for a few years and then, discovering, the opposite sex and cars and thinking about college and moving on with their lives. And today, comics are written for a static audience of the same aging demographic. Very few new readers coming in. And so this, as I said, a moral fatigue sort of sets in where you're like, well, why didn't he just kill the Joker and get it over with? First of all, do you really want that to happen? I mean, that alters the whole continuity. If Lex Luthor's not around, who do you replace Lex Luthor with? And how do you explain to the general public, who knows that Lex Luthor is Superman's arch nemesis, that Lex Luthor now no longer exists? It's just, I see the frustration of longtime fans, but you got to look at the medium as a medium. Once you're not a kid anymore, you kind of gotta look at it from a distance. And I'm not saying that you can't enjoy it. I certainly do. I certainly enjoy reading comics, but you kind of got to suspend that disbelief. And as you get older, you got to work at suspending that disbelief. When you're a kid, you just buy anything put in front of you. Oh, he can fly? Cool. And now we're like, well, how can he fly? And how fast? And how does he, why would the yellow sun affect him in this way? It's like, okay, these are imponderables that when you're reading superhero comics, you really shouldn't be thinking about. You should just be thinking about the story. And if you're not just thinking about the story, somewhere along the line, the creators have not done their job, because they have distracted you from the basic ludicrousness of superhero comics. They haven't distracted you by delighting you with a story, engaging you with a story. And I just, I don't want a Superman who kills. I want a Superman who's smart enough to solve his problems without killing, because a Superman who kills is a monster. He really is, because he can do anything. He has near godlike powers. And, you would be frightened of Superman if he started killing the bad guys, because you were like, well, what if he decides he doesn't like this group next? What if he kills a bunch of the wrong people? We see, what's going on today with, bad guys created out of whole cloth by the news media. People that probably don't even exist, and would Superman go after them? Superman was able to end the Ku Klux Klan without killing anybody. So, I don't want Superman tainted. He's Batman either. It's a shortcut. It's lazy writing. It's extremely lazy writing when it comes to Superman, because, it would be heavy lifting to figure out how would Superman defeat Zod in that situation. But would it really? There's probably a whole bunch of ways that could have been done without outright murdering the guy. And of course, all the questions arise. They arise in an earlier video. So why didn't he just turn his laser beam eyes away? Why didn't he just choke him out till he was unconscious? Why all of a sudden could he kill him when minutes before he couldn't defeat him in an open fight? A lot of these things don't make any sense. It's just lazy writing. It's lazy writing. So think about it. Reorder your thoughts. Change your mind on this subject. I hope I've convinced you. Dan Donovan, what do you think of Taylor Sheridan's Duttonverse, Yellowstone, 1883 and 1923? I wonder when the guy sleeps. He's so prolific, and TV writing is tough, but he's been given a free hand by Paramount, thank goodness. I've enjoyed everything he's done. He's got there's a toughness of mind there. There's a worldview that I share, that the world is a tragic place where tragedy and chaos are the natural order of things, and we need to expect that, and we need to know that we can't really change it. And Yellowstone certainly brings that out. It is a tough show. And I thought shows like Sopranos and Breaking Bad had my moral compass spinning, Yellowstone really spins that moral compass because there's no judgment on what these people are doing. The Duttons will do anything to preserve their little piece of heaven in Montana, and while you're rooting for them, you're like, wait a minute, it's the 21st century. We're not supposed to act this way anymore. This is less problematic in the prequels. I did see 1883. In fact, I watched it recently. Sam Elliott's best performance ever. I mean, wow. I mean, he's always been good, but he really pulled it out for this one. I liked it. I liked a lot of it. I thought it went on a little too long. I thought the youngest daughter, her learning curve wasn't as sharp as it should have been because, even after she sees all of this death around her, she keeps wandering off alone from the others. After Sheridan has taken great pains to show how freaking dangerous it was in the Wild Wild West. And, but it was a good story overall. It was an epic Western, and I thought it treated all the characters fairly, and it also kept the characters in period. They acted like they would have acted in period. I particularly like the Buffalo Soldier character, who was realistically portrayed. I mean, often when they introduce minority characters into Westerns, the minority characters act as if they're the equals of everyone around them, and everyone accepts that, and we all know that wasn't true. And this Buffalo Soldier character, he rarely speaks. Whenever he's in, the company of strangers, he lets Elliot do all the talking. But then when they're in private, he's able to speak his mind. I just thought that was a very realistic portrayal, and he was my favorite character in the series. But it was a way to have an African American character in the story that didn't violate any kind of historical accuracy. This guy was still a man in full and an independent, free man, but he knew there were boundaries because of the color of his skin. But it wasn't treated with resentment or anything else. It was treated as, this is just the way it is, and that's the way it was. 1923, I haven't seen. I assume it continues the characters from 1883 into the 20th century. I will watch it as soon as I get the Blu-ray. The Blu-ray is released, I will watch it. But of all the things Sheridan has done, the Sicario movies and all the rest, my favorite thing he's done is The Mayor of Kingstown. This show is seriously nuts. This show is like a testament to how much creative freedom they've given this guy. It's a very bleak, hard-boiled crime story about a family of fixers in a town that appears to be outside of Detroit, and it just builds to a final episode that is insane. Sam Peckinpah's wildest nightmares wouldn't have come up with the final episode of this first season, and I hope it continues. I'd like to see another season, but I'm fine if this is the only one. This is just epic. If you've never seen it, you need to check it out. It's the toughest, roughest thing he's ever written, and for Taylor Sheridan, that's really saying something. Hey, Danny gets a twin spin, and there's his kitty Duke. Nobody named Duke is a kitty. He's a tomcat. All right. Given the popularity of Westerns on the various streaming platforms, is the time right to bring real Westerns, one without supernatural or science fiction elements, back to comics? I would certainly think so. I would certainly hope so. I'm kind of tired of, it's a Western with witches. It's a Western with vampires. I'm tired of that. I don't want to see any more of that. I want to see straight up Westerns. And Western comics are produced all around the world. So why not? Why can't they be produced here where they happened? And I think there would be a large populace of casual readers who would enjoy them. As I said earlier, Jonah Hex was DC's #1 selling title. The problem would be to make the potential audience for Western comics aware of them. But, that's all marketing, and that's beyond my pay grade. But yeah, I think that's a possibility. Oh, Dan gets a triple spin. There's Duke again. He's awful happy to be here. More on Westerns. Are there any classic Western comic book characters you think would be successfully revived today? Let's make this more challenging. Not Jonah Hex or a character you've already written. So no Man with No Name or Lone Ranger. Atlas, which was what the company was called before it changed its name to Marvel, had a recurring character called Arrowhead. And while he was only featured in 4 of his own titles, 4 issues of his own title, he was a frequent backup in a number of their other comics, like Two Gun Western and Outlaw Western, the many Western comics that Atlas published. And they were publishing like 5 a month. And he was always drawn, penciled and inked by Joe Sinnott. And the stories are fun, they're mean. This guy's a real badass. Sinnott's art was always spectacular. Sinnott's known as an inker over Kirby and probably Kirby's best collaborator in that realm. But he was also an excellent storyteller and penciler, very, very close to Russ Heath in level of detail and the dynamism and panel composition and things like that. But it'd be cool to write a badass Native American character. Rawhide Kid, I always like the kind of lighter touch that Kirby gave this character when the character was reintroduced at Marvel as written by Stan and drawn by Jack. And, I'd like to take a shot at it. And he had kind of a Steve McQueen vibe, which I imagine was inspired by Wanted Dead or Alive, because he's a little shorter than all the other Western characters, which made him interesting to me and a bit more athletic. Now, remember, a lot, in fact, probably the bulk of Western comics when I was growing up were based on TV shows. So I would, in a heartbeat, take a whack at a Rifleman comic or a Rawhide comic. Have Gun Will Travel, any of them. I'd be all over that. Hey, Dan earns a quadruple spin, the rare and vaunted and much desired quadruple spin. And Duke is just flipping out over that. Any chance you'd collaborate with Garth Ennis anytime soon, since you both admire each other's work on The Punisher and also have an affinity for both war and Western comics? It seems like you'd be naturals to work together. I disagree. First of all, Garth doesn't need my help. and I'd like to think I don't need his. And that's not like, no, I wouldn't want to write something with him. I mean, if we were thrown in a room together, I'm sure we could come up with something crazy. But we approached the material differently. I know to a reader it looks on the surface like we're kind of on the same page the way we tell stories, but we're really not. We're really not, because I read Garth's stuff and he continually surprises me in the directions he takes, and he takes things in a direction I would never take them. Things like Preacher and stuff like that. I mean, I would never imagine ever working on anything like that. And again, I'm not taking anything away from it, because he has his own individual idiosyncratic way of telling a story. And I don't think I have an idiosyncratic way of telling a story, but I have my own way. And I don't know that it would be a good mix. Maybe we're too similar, but like his approach to telling war comics is entirely different from mine. It's good. I like his approach. I like his stuff. I love that he does the homework and cares about the genre so much, but our approaches are entirely different. So probably would not be a good mix. So, Seth, I'm a big Savage Sword of Conan fan. I recently read number 170, where you embroiled Conan in a love triangle with Red Sonja and Valeria. I give it 2 hubba hubbas. I'm just getting to the main body of your work in the higher 100s, so I can't yet compare your early writing to Siege of the Black Citadel, which I thought was really great. How does issue 170 hold up to how you see the characters now? Does the audience seem different? Yeah, I mean, the audience, we were going for a broad audience in Savage Sword. We were going for a broad audience of casual readers. And Larry and I always thought, well, we're writing this for, like motorcycle gang members or people doing a long jolt in prison, That's who we were writing for. The toxically masculine. To our surprise, a whole lot of our letters came from housewives and senior citizen homes. They seem to form a big part of our readership, casual readership. And I like that idea, that these stories, and the reason for it, I think, is because, the covers are engaging. I mean, it's hard to look away from these covers. And it's a 50-page done-in-one story. I mean, you really felt like you got value for your $1.50 or whatever these things cost. And you got to read a whole story, and you didn't have to buy the next one. You didn't have to buy the one before it. That's what a casual reader does. They pick up the comic if they like the cover, if it makes them want to look inside. And so that's where we were. And so we were writing for a broader audience. That said, I tried to be as faithful to Howard's portrayal of Conan as I could be in a comic. But, we took a little bit of license here and there, probably a little bit more humor thrown in, and quite a bit more emphasis on sex than Howard had. Howard's, there's a lot of hormones in a Howard story, but it never comes to the forefront. So, yeah, I mean, we were, I don't want to say pandering, but we were trying to reach a universal audience with, good, solid, action-packed Conan stories. Now, writing a prose Conan's different because I feel like I've got to be even more faithful to Howard, even to the point of trying to use his voice, his language for Conan as much as possible, to the point where my monitor, I've just I guess a few weeks ago I finished the third of these books. And my monitor has these little Post-it notes all around the edges of it where I've listed, Robert E. Howard words, Conan words I want to use, like lurch, plunge, hack, dash, plummet. I'm reading off of one of the Post-its. So I wanted to stay closer to the language. So these are more written for real Conan aficionados. I'm sure casual readers would enjoy them as well. But people familiar with Conan in prose, that's who these are aimed at. And you can get Siege of the Black Citadel at Amazon or go to Archaven, and book 2 is going to be announced very soon. As I said, I've finished book 3. That'll be announced probably before the end of the year. All 3 will be available for your perusal. Jethru, oh man, you told me how to pronounce this. Jethru Cranley. I've heard of there being fans that either love or love DC and wait a minute. Let me start. I've heard of there being fans that either love DC and dislike Marvel, or love Marvel and dislike DC. I don't really get the concept of doing this, as I was brought up on characters from both, such as Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, JLA, and the X-Men. Just because I like fictional material that one company put out doesn't mean I'm going to avoid material that's put out by another because of it. What are your thoughts on this? I've never understood this. I mean, this is like, I'm only going to buy music from this record label. And the thing is, I mean, creators move back and forth between these companies. So if you're following comic creators, you're going to pick up DC's and Marvel's. I mean, when I was a kid, I bought the DC War titles and Marvel Superhero. I didn't like Marvel War titles, and I didn't really buy that many DC superhero titles. Some Batman now and then. Never really bought Superman. Funny that I got into Superman later in life. Began to appreciate that character. But yeah, I never understood what that was about. I mean, why would you prefer one company over the other? They're both telling stories within the same genre, and often the same creators, just moving back and forth between the two. And it's funny, I remember my first day in 7th grade. You know what it's like when you go to a new middle school, and all the elementary schools in the area, all the kids are suddenly there. So you've got this population of kids you've never met before. And on my very first day, I'm at my locker, and a bunch of guys approach with a bunch of guys I don't know. And they come up to me and they say, you need to settle this. I'm like, settle what? And he says, which is better, DC or Marvel? And we had like kids from both camps awaiting. I was like seen as the acknowledged expert on all things comic book for some reason. I had that rep, which I didn't know until this moment, that I was going to be the arbiter of which was better, Marvel or DC. And I failed them by saying, well, I like them both. It depends on the comic. It depends on who's writing it. It depends on who's drawing it. What do I care, DC or Marvel, as long as if it's a good comic? And they all walked away disheartened. No red pill or blue pill from me. JMB USA. I'm ruminating over your wonderful works with Jorge Zaffino. When you collaborated with Zaffino, was he your personal selection, or had he been in the Rolodex and the stars aligned as he was assigned to you? Apologies if this is a retread ground for discussion. Have you ever had any interaction, collaboration with his son Gerardo? He appears to be an ace with the illustrations as well. Jorge was Argentine. He was Buenos Aires, and his artwork was included in these portfolios that were brought to the United States by the Villagrán brothers, Ricardo and Enrique, and they were doing inking work for primarily DC Comics at the time, and they would bring every time they came to the United States, and they spent quite a bit of time here, going back and forth, working for the companies, all the rest of it. And they would bring these reams of Xeroxes of artists from their studio. They had a big studio in Buenos Aires, which was doing work for one of the major publishers down there, Columba. And the artwork it all just blew me away. There were so many great artists, Juan Zanato, Lito Fernandez, Carlos Vogt. I mean, all these terrific artists. But the one that really leaped out at me was Jorge. Jorge Zaffino's work just had this dynamism. Later when I got to know him better, I found that his major influences were Joe Kubert, Russ Heath, and Gene Colan. And if you look hard, you can see all of them. You can see all of them there. And, the Gene Colan, his ability with faces, Joe Kubert, the dynamism, Russ Heath, the meticulous attention to detail and accuracy in items. But he was different than all of them because he just had this style, just this raw style. It's hard to describe, but when I show artists his originals, they just stare at them like, what the hell is this guy doing? I mean, he's got pages that look amazing when they're reduced. And when you see the original, it looks like he inked them with the end of a broken popsicle stick, and the pages would always come, rumpled and look like he wrestled on the floor with them or something. And, but that was the appeal. And he's the one artist that every artist asks me about. Now, to get back to the story, when I saw his artwork, I said, I have to create something for this guy. And so through the Villagrans, I approached him with the idea for Winter World, and then pitched it to Eclipse. And Jorge did like a bunch of pitch pieces, which we eventually used for the covers. And Eclipse jumped at it. Dean Mulaney could see what I saw. Surprisingly, a lot of comic book editors could not see what I saw and what every artist saw, but Dean saw it and said, "Yeah, let's put this guy to work." And we did Winter World. I very much enlisted Jorge for his first work in the United States. I very much wanted to work with him, and worked with him, a number of times on a number of projects at Marvel, at Eclipse, and the experience was always extraordinary. Just a terrific guy to work with, endlessly inventive. And like I said, an artist. When I worked at CrossGen, I had a lot of, I brought my original art collection along with me. And a lot of it there was a lot of Zaffino in it. And one artist after another, as it got around the building, that I had all these Zaffino originals, which were, not readily available in the original art trades. Zaffino didn't sell pages. He traded pages with other artists. And so every artist would come one by one and say, could I Xerox those Zaffino pages? and they kept that cross-gen Xerox machine humming, making copies of the pages in my collection. But yeah, I mean, just a terrific guy. We lost him way too soon. I mean, he died in his 40s from a heart condition, and just a major talent, and one of the few guys in comics that I can say was a true genius. Never phoned it in, And his son, this is a piece by Gerardo. He's extremely talented as well. And getting more and more recognition, deserved recognition as time goes on. And yes, I am in contact with Gerardo and Jorge's wife, because we share ownership of Winterworld, and every once in a while the idea of a Winterworld movie or TV show or something comes up, and we have to do business together, and because it's a partnership. So yeah, I remain in contact with the Zaffino family. Because we're stewards of the Winterworld property as well as 7 Block, the other property, creator-owned property Jorge and I worked on together. Now, there's been a lot of questions about the Amish recently, and I thought I'd share something, a little bit of Amish history. I'm not an Amish expert, but I've uncovered something that there was actually in the 1970s. There was an independent film producer who took advantage of, the young people would go off on rumspringing. I don't know if you know about rumspringing, but the Amish allow their young people to basically go out into, quote unquote, the world as like normal teenagers or normal young people and experience the world, because they don't want them to devote themselves to the Amish lifestyle by force. They want it to be their choice. And so they want them to see the world and hopefully come back. And most of them do. Most of them, sow their wild oats, driving cars and, drinking beers and, whatever, watching TV, using electric toothbrushes, whatever it is they're not allowed to do as an Amish. And they spend a period of time doing this and then come back to the Amish community knowing that, I've made the choice of my own free will. And what a lot of people don't know is that an independent film producer tried to take advantage of this demographic and created some what are now known as Amish exploitation movies. So, things like they call me Mr. Stolfus. He's had enough of English guff, starring, Amish acting legend Johnny Zook, who's often referred to as the Sylvester Stallone of the Amish community, as well as Hell Up in Lidditz. They raised a lot of corn and a lot of hell up in Lidditz with Isaac Good and Amy Miller. And they made forays into the horror genre with I Saw What You Did, I Know Where You Plow. And my favorite, Three the Dutch Way. Evildoers come to harm when these three step off the farm. Unfortunately, demographics is just way too small to support this production slate, and these films were, gone and forgotten and never put on VHS or DVD because the Amish don't have the means to play those things. Hey, if you want to reach me, contact me at brunobookstore@gmail.com, brunobookstore@gmail.com. It is the most reliable way to ask your questions, make suggestions, send in pictures of your kitties and doggies. And while I still have you, Rambo First Kill is still available at Indiegogo. It will be out, I would imagine, in a month or so. But it will be available in demand all through the summer. So it's not a call by midnight tonight kind of thing, but you don't want to forget to order this one because it's a straight up war story graphic novel of John Rambo's first tour in Vietnam. It's kind of the Rambo origin story where we get to see how he went from being just a normal, average Arizona teenage jock to the awesome killing machine that Rambo would become. So, and I should add that a lot of the stories in here are based on things told to me by Vietnam vets that I could not use in the Marvel Nam comic because of the Comics Code. So these things appear here for the first time. So a lot of the things we see Rambo experiencing are things told to me by people who are actually in country in this period, the sort of pre-Tet Offensive era in Vietnam. I believe they called it Phase 2 of the Vietnam War. So that's it for now. I mean, thanks for liking, thanks for listening, thanks for watching, especially thanks for subscribing. If you haven't hit that subscription button, please do. And I will see you all down the road.